Our song selection today is Plenty Good Room.
Plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Just choose your seat and sit down. Plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Just choose your seat and sit down.
I would not be a liar. I tell you the reason why. I'm afraid my might call on me, and I wouldn't be ready to die. That's why there's
Plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Just choose your seat and sit down.
I would not be a cheater. I tell you the reason why. I'm afraid my might call on me, and I wouldn't be ready to die. That's why there's
Plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Just choose your seat and sit down.
I would not be a sinner. I tell you the reason why. I'm afraid my might call on me, and I wouldn't be ready to die. That's why there's
Plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Just choose your seat and sit down. Plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Just choose your seat and sit down. Just choose your seat and sit down. Just choose your seat and sit down.
The oracles of the UCI. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 11. But the end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore so to prayer. Hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of Elohim. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which Elohim gives, that Elohim in all things may be glorified through Yahshua HaMashiach, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 29 through chapter 5 and verse 4. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of Elohim, whereby you are sealed until the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be you kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Elohim for Yahshua's sake has forgiven you. Be you therefore followers of Elohim, as their children, and walk in love, as the Mashiach also have loved us, and has given himself for us an offering and sacrifice to Elohim for a sweet-smelling savor. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becomes saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather given of thanks. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Keep your foot when you go to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim. For Elohim is in heaven, and you upon earth. Therefore, let your words be few. Exodus chapter 23, verses 20 and 21. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Revelations chapter 3, verses 20 through 22. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I have also overcame and am sat down with my Father in his throne. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches.
All right. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Which is peace on Yahweh's holy Sabbath day. Welcome to another holy convocation that Yahweh has enjoined unto us here in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Today's Sabbath sermon, we're going to deal with the effects of the curses and what they have done unto the children of Israel. As we end up going about our day-to-day lives, we end up running into some things that we have gotten accustomed to sort of pushing to the side, because we try to deal with our regular things of paying the bills and things of that nature. But there are some things that kind of drag on, and they drag on from generation to generation, and we pass those things along. And the more we kind of go along with the things that have been handed down to us, the more problems we end up passing down from generation to generation. It is impossible for any group of people to go through the things that the children of Israel have had to go through and it not affect you in a long-term manner. And we have to understand that these are the effects of the curses. We'll read those things, but then we will separate them from some of the things that our people deal with, especially as we come out of real dire problems. You stop paying attention to those things because it's not an immediate problem as of right now. So we're going to begin today's sermon in Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy 28, we're going to start with verses 1 through 2, and then we're going to jump to verse 15. And today's sermon is entitled Fatherhood and the Effects of the Curses. Fatherhood and the Effects of the Curses.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if you shall hearken diligently unto the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command you this day, that Yahweh your Elohim will set you on high above all nations of the earth.
Right. This is Yahweh's promise unto Israel. This is the beginning of everything. If you observe these things, then you will not just have a situation where you don't have a whole lot of problems. You're going to have a situation where your nation will be on high above all nations. People say that, well, Yahweh does not care one group of people over another. That's not true. It says Yahweh does not have respect of persons, but Yahweh has set a certain group of people to be his representatives on the earth. So those people cannot be looked at and be dealt with the same as everybody else. It is impossible. They are his representatives. And if you're going to represent Yahweh here on the earth, things with you are going to be different. Now, that could be different good, and that can also be different bad. We ourselves have noticed where other groups of people have done wrong and they basically get a smack on the wrist. We do it and we end up with hard time. That is part of that difference in being Yahweh's chosen people. It doesn't just work for you for good. And this is one of the things that the pep rally Hebrews like to deal with. They only want to deal with the good part of being Israel. Well, that's a double-fold thing. Just like you get the good about being Israel, you also get the bad too. Because he's got a more keen and watchful eye upon the things that Israel does. Go ahead.
Verse 2. And all these blessings shall come on you and overtake you, if you shall hearken unto the voice of Yahweh your Elohim.
Right. All of these blessings shall come on you and overtake you. Think about a blessing so strong that it overtakes you. That means the blessings start driving you. You don't even look for stuff and stuff just show up. You don't even try to do things and it just get presented to you. That's being overtaken by a blessing. And the only thing you got to do that is walk in his commandments. That's why all of the nations teach against the commandments. Because that's all you got to do to be above every other nation on the earth is do what he asks you to do. That's it. So instead of actually fighting you, the nations don't need to really fight you. And this was known way back when. This is why even the people that wanted to deal with Daniel, they said we should not find a problem with Daniel unless we find it concerning the laws of his Elohim. If we want to deal with Daniel, all we got to do is find a problem between him and the law of his God. That's it. We're going to destroy him. This is how you get to Daniel. And he was one of the chief of the children of Israel. So if they learn that about dealing with the chief, the smartest, the brightest, the most gifted of Israel, if that work on him, what you think he's going to do to the regular man? They figured this out a long time ago. We on the backside trying to figure this out. The nations figured that out before they even stole this place. They had already figured out how to deal with you. Go ahead.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if you will not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you.
Now you have curses that are coming upon you and shall overtake you. Now you have to deal with, when you talk about something overtaking something. I was driving the other day and I watched this little bitty car. I'm talking about it was a Skittle. It barely had enough space for four wheels. It should have just been two. This thing was so little. It jumped right in front of a 18-wheeler tractor trailer, and it was barely enough room in front of that. And I am in my car screaming because I don't want to see the guts pop out of this Skittle when he hit it. They don't understand the power of the weight that's in that trailer. The weight that's in that trailer overtakes the vehicle. So when he get ready to stop, he stopped on his brakes. But now the weight behind him pushes him forward. That's being overtaken. Now, consider that upon the blessing on one side and then the curse on the other side. So here it is, you say, I'm going to stop. And the curse says, no, you're not. No, keep on going. No. You had a chance to stop a long time ago. Keep on going. No, but I want to stop right here. No, you don't. You're going to stop way down there. Yeah, but ain't going to be nothing left of me right way down there. Yeah, I know. Go ahead, bro.
Verse 16. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your store. Cursed shall be the fruit of your body and the fruit of your land, the increase of your kind and the flocks of your sheep.
So even as you start to work and do things that you're supposed to do, you keep ending up with situations where you make a bunch of money on the left and then you just keep getting these mysterious bills on the right. I just made $5,000. Where did $2,000 bill come from? What the hell? What the, who did that? How this break? How this happen? Go ahead.
Cursed shall you be when you come in, and cursed shall you be when you go out. Yahweh shall send upon you cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that you set your hand unto for to do, until you be destroyed, and until you perish quickly, because of the wickedness of your doings, whereby you have forsaken me.
Right. And the most wicked, what we do is we watch people do things unto other people, and we say, you know, man, that was wickedness. What Yahweh is watching as wickedness is what we did to him. We're looking at somebody else and see, ooh, look at what they did to that was wicked. And Yahweh said, you didn't see what you did? What was you on the Sabbath? All right, well, you were wicked then. But we're looking at other stuff. We don't see that part when he's looking at us. What was you? Do you know my holidays were coming up? Where were you? These things shall happen unto you because of the wickedness of your dealings according to the law that I gave you. It wasn't a guess as to what was wicked and what was not. See, we like to guess what things we like and what things we dislike. Yahweh already gave us a list. We don't have to figure out what's wicked and what's not wicked. That's not up to us. Go ahead.
Yahweh shall make the pestilence cleave unto you, until he have consumed you from off the land, whether you go to possess it. Yahweh shall smite you with a consumption, and with a fever, and with an inflammation, and with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew. And they shall pursue you until you perish.
And we have physical ailments, especially being in the daughter of Babylon, that overtake us more than anybody else. You have situations that other people get. When we get it, it messes us up totally. We won't consider that as part of the curses. We don't consider that there's supposed to be a certain amount of protection over us. Go ahead.
And your heaven that is over your head shall be brass, and the earth that is under you shall be iron.
Right. When we get work, our work end up being the hardest in the place. You look at everybody else in the place where you work and look at how hard you work, and you're like, wait a minute, I got the hard job. They checks more than mine. Go ahead.
Yahweh shall make the rain of your land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon you until you be destroyed. Yahweh shall cause you to be smitten before your enemies. You shall go in one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth.
And this is another one of the punishments of the children of Israel that has placed us in all these places among the earth. This is one of the things of the punishment that has us not just in the daughter of Babylon, but we're everywhere. So we can't just deal with Israel as being in the United States. We are all over the globe. This was part of the punishment. Yahweh knows the power of Israel. If he had put all us in the same place, we would have taken over that place. They have a hard time with us not taking over the places where we go anyway. A few of us go somewhere, we take it over. So Yahweh like, no, I know there's people here. They try to take over my stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yahweh, I already know. Look at them. They're trying to rule my temple. Hey, that's my temple, man. Get out over there. You can't sit there. We trying to take his stuff. So he knew better than to send all of us to the same place. It would have been the United States of Israel. This would be ours, baby. Every bit of it. He was like, don't send all of them to one place. And y'all don't think he learned early? What did he say? Levi and Simeon, didn't he say they can't be together? He already know when they get together, people mysteriously die. Okay? Do something to them if you want to. Everybody gonna die. And y'all know we got them same straight-faced killers right amongst us now. They look at you straight. Somebody gonna die tonight. Yeah, they amongst us. Because they are us. So he knew not to put all all us in the same place. That is a certain amount of power that you have, whether you know it or not. It's in you. So he had to separate you from the rest of your people. Otherwise, the curse wouldn't have been a curse. You can't come here and take over. That's not according to the curse. Go ahead.
And your carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air and unto the beasts of the earth. And no man shall fray them away.
Right. And they left us hanging on those trees as a sign. And it mentally scarred our people. And to this day, they do the same thing. What do you think is the difference when they shoot a black man in the middle of the street and leave him there for 10 hours? What is the difference between hanging a black man and leaving him on the doggone branch for the birds to pick his flesh? What is the difference? It is the same thing. They're doing the exact same thing as what they did before. This huge police department, they got tanks, they got helicopters, they have automatic weapons, they have smoke grenades, but they can't get a sheet big enough to cover a whole body. It's a 5-foot man laying on the ground, yet it's a 2-foot sheet supposed to be over him. Come on, man. You can buy a tank, but you couldn't buy a sheet to cover the man up. And until you have to drive right next to a body, some of this, what I'm saying, ain't making no sense to you. But I'm had to drive by one and look at the leg hang out. Hey, man. So, even if you didn't have nothing but a 2-foot sheet, didn't you have more than one? Didn't you have more than one sheet? So why I gotta ride by and look at this dude, man? Because you wanted me to look at that dude. Because you wanted it to get in my head. You wanted it to alter my thought process of looking at this dead black man in the street. Go ahead.
Verse 27, Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 27. Yahweh will smite you with the botch of Egypt, and with the emerods, and with the scab, and with the itch wherever you cannot be healed. Yahweh shall smite you with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. And you shall grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and you shall not prosper in your ways, and you shall be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall serve you. You shall betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her.
Right, and we know how those things was orchestrated amongst the children of Israel, how those things were set forth, and it invaded our relationships on how they dealt with things. But we're going to get to a little bit more of that in a second. Go ahead, bro.
You shall build an house, and you shall not dwell therein. You shall plant a vineyard, and shall not gather the grapes thereof. Your ox shall be slain before your eyes, and you shall not eat thereof. Your ass shall be violently taken away from before your face, and shall not be restored to you. Your sheep shall be given unto your enemies, and you shall have none to rescue them. Your sons and your daughters shall be given unto another people, and your eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in your hand.
And we know that there are many other things that we can deal with in going into dealing with those curses. But I want to read, go to this next graphic, and let's read some things on the legislation in some of these United States of America, so we can understand how some of those things fit into their legislation, the very thing that was given unto us. Go ahead.
As English colonists began the process of putting slavery into place, they paid careful attention to family arrangements among enslaved people. Legislators in Virginia and Massachusetts passed laws in the 1600s making clear that the rules would be different for slaves and that family would not offer protection from slavery. The following is a Virginia statute that changed the English common law provision that a father's status determined his children's status.
Now, there's some things I had for a long time we have kind of talked about and discussed how backwards the so-called Jewish thing of I'm Jewish through my mother I just understood Jewish through my mother last night. Read this.
Virginia Statutes 1662, what is it, Henning 2, 170. Negro women's children were to serve according to the condition of the mother, whereas some doubts have arisen whether children got or begotten by any Englishman upon a Negro woman should be slave or free.
So this was the question. This was about allowing the father, the slave master, to be able to fornicate with all of the slave women without giving a better status to the child that was born. Because before, the power or whatever the father was transferred to the child. So this law, and understand how many slick Jewish lawyers you got. Understand this thing here is now being constructed so that they can operate however. But the children from that union still are slaves. Go ahead.
Be it therefore enacted and declared by this present Grand Assembly that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free only according to the condition of the mother. And that if any Christian shall commit fornication with a Negro man or woman, he or she so offending shall pay double the fines imposed by the former act.
So they had to pay, and this then followed the mother. That's where you get your Jewish, I'm Jewish by my mother, because it don't follow anything in this book. And every time we read it, we would try to figure out where they got this from. Because it ain't in the Torah. They claim to be Torah followers. Where did they get I'm Jewish through my mother? They've been playing games the whole time. But because they put stuff in writing, this is how we find out. You just got to keep reading. They always tell on themselves. They always tell on themselves. But you got to read it. Go ahead, bro.
Family separation through sale was a constant threat. Enslaved people lived with the perpetual possibility of separation through the sale of one or more family members. Slave owners' wealth lay largely in the people they owned. Therefore, they frequently sold and or purchased people as finances warranted. A multitude of scenarios brought about sale. An enslaved person could be sold as part of an estate when his owner died, or because the owner needed to liquidate assets to pay off debts, or because the owner thought the enslaved person was a troublemaker.
Right. So a lot of you Jamaicans, you just a nation of troublemakers. They kicked y'all off the boats. They just dropped y'all off. You're just a nation of troublemakers. That, you know, they said, look, we can't deal with these Jamaicans. They got a whole place for y'all. See? And then more troublemakers just bred with more troublemakers, see? See, they couldn't control y'all. So that place was made for people that they just could not control. Because they had a tendency, we can't control these people, drop them off. We can't control these, drop them off. Sooner or later, that just became the drop-off point for people that they just could not control. But that says something about your spirit as a people. That each time, no matter what batch they had, that batch of people just could not be controlled. They just did not like servitude in that manner. That says something. Go ahead.
A father might be sold away by his owner while the mother and children remained behind, or the mother and children might be sold. Enslaved families were also divided for inheritance when an owner died, or because the owner's adult children moved away to create new lives, taking some of the enslaved people with them. These decisions were, of course, beyond the control of the people whose lives they affected most. Sometimes an enslaved man or woman pleaded with an owner to purchase his or her spouse to avoid separation. The intervention was not always successful. Historian Michael Tadman has estimated that approximately 1/3 of enslaved children in the upper South states of Maryland and Virginia experienced family separation in one of the three possible scenarios: sale away from parents, sale with mother away from father, or sale of mother or father away from child. The fear of separation haunted adults who knew how likely it was to happen. Young children, innocently unaware of the possibilities, learned quickly of the pain that such separations could cause.
Right. So then when we greet one another as brother and sister, you're talking about a long held thing inside of these people who really didn't know if the person they were greeting was their brother or sister for real. They walked around the corner and never came back again. So for the rest of their lives, they was looking for their brother or their sister. So amongst us, we always greet one another. Hey, brother. Hey, sister. This thing goes way farther than we can ever imagine. Imagine seeing your brother or sister walk out the house with a strange person who you ain't never seen, and they never come back. Nobody says anything to you. You just see somebody walk up, they leave, and it's a done deal. They might just be 10 miles down the road. They just couldn't get 10 miles down the road. Go ahead, bro.
Many owners encourage marriage to protect their investment in their slaves. Paradoxically, despite the likelihood of breaking up families, family formation actually helped owners to keep slavery in place. Owners debated among themselves the benefits of enslaved people forming families. Many of them reasoned that having families made it much less likely that a man or woman would run away, thus depriving the owner of valuable property. Many owners encourage marriage, devise the practice of jumping the broom.
Right, and people still throw those things in because it was one of the ways that we were able to signify that these people were together. Go ahead.
As a ritual that enslaved people could engage in, and sometimes gave small gifts for the wedding. Some owners honored the choices enslaved people made about whom their partners would be. Other owners assigned partners, forcing people into relationships they would not have chosen for themselves.
Right, and we know that in a situation of developing stronger slaves, they placed people together who would make stronger children. This was all about making a stronger slave the same way people would breed animals. Go ahead.
Abolitionists attacked slavery by pointing to the harm it inflicted upon families. Just as owners used the formation of family ties to their own advantage, abolitionists used the specter of separation to argue against the institution of slavery. Frederick Douglass, who was enslaved in Maryland before he escaped to Massachusetts and became an abolitionist, stridently working to end slavery, began the narrative of his life by examining the effect of slavery on his own family. He never knew his father, he said, although he heard it whispered that it was his owner.
That it was his owner. So when you deal with that, he would have automatically been free had they not made sure that you must follow the condition of the mother. And you have to wonder why so-called Jewish people that are so-called biblically oriented, why would they have such a custom as Jewish through the mother? You gotta think about how many of them own slaves. They following slave narratives. Go ahead.
Further, he lived with his grandmother while his mother lived and worked miles away, walking to see him late at night. In his narrative, aimed at an abolitionist audience, Douglass suggested that slave owners purposefully separated children from their parents in order to blunt the development of affection between them.
All right. Think about that. Slave owners purposely separated children from their parents in order to stunt the growth of their development of affection between one another. To this day, some of us still operate in that manner. Go ahead.
You were talking about Jamaica earlier, and this is a conversation I was having with my mom during the week here. That affects islanders more than anybody else. We just, especially the males, just do not understand the affectionate of family ties, children. I can speak for Jamaican males more than anybody else. That affection is a problem. It's a huge problem.
Well, you know, I was thinking about the thing that you had told me about how Jamaicans were dealt with in slavery and how the men still operate.
Yep.
Go ahead and tell them you Jamaican, bro.
Well, the way they have it is that the men were on one side of the island and the women were on the other side. And they would only allow those people to come together for breeding. And so therefore the men never had an opportunity to develop any type of relationship with these children. And 9 times out of 10, when it happened again, they were not seeing the same person. And in the conversation with mom, that's what I was telling her. We still, as Jamaican men, use that terminology when we have a woman pregnant of breeding. I've got a woman breeding. You breed animals. We still have that animalistic mentality up to this day.
Now, if I would have said that, Jamaicans would have been mad at me. You see that? You see what I'm talking about? See, you got to learn how to pick your battles. You understand what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? I had to let the Jamaicans say that. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, brother. Finish that up.
Similarly, white northern novelist and abolitionist Harriet Beecher Stowe used the sale and separation of families as a sharp critique of slavery in her famous novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Abolitionists such as Douglas and Stowe argued that slavery was immoral on many grounds, and the destruction of families was one of them.
All right, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 31. Deuteronomy chapter 31, and we're going to read verses 1 through 13.
Verse 1. And Moshe went and spake these words unto all Israel. And he said unto them, I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in. Also Yahweh has said unto me, you shall not go over this Jordan. Yahweh your Elohim, he will go over before you, and he will destroy these nations from before you, and you shall possess them. And Yahshua, he shall go over before you, as Yahweh had said. And Yahweh shall do unto them as he did to Sihon and to Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them, whom he destroyed. And Yahweh shall give them up before your face, that you may do unto them according unto all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For Yahweh your Elohim, he it is that does go with you. He will not fail you, nor forsake you. And Moshe called unto Yahshua, and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, be strong and of a good courage, for you must go with this people unto the land which Yahweh hath sworn unto their fathers to give them, and you shall cause them to inherit it. And Yahweh, he it is that does go before you.
Now, I want you to pay attention to this verse 7 toward the end, and you shall cause them to inherit it. There is a certain part in dealing with inheritance. There has to be the legitimate son that is able to receive an inheritance. And I just want you to remember that word as we go to some other things. Go ahead.
He will be with you. He will not fail you, neither forsake you. Fear not, neither be dismayed. And Moshe wrote this law and delivered it unto the priests, the sons of Levi, which bear the ark of the covenant of Yah, and unto all the elders of Israel. And Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the feast of tabernacles, when all Israel is come to appear before Yahweh your Elohim, in the place which he shall choose, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing.
Right. So then, if not dealing with the law led to all of the things that we have just read, then having to constantly go over this law is trying to keep Israel from going through all of the things that we just read about. But that's not how the nations tell that to us. They tell us that when you start reading the law, oh, y'all dealing with that bondage. And it's actually the opposite. And causing them to constantly go over this law, he's trying to keep them out of bondage. But go and tell a Sunday church person that you're reading the law. Oh, you dealing with that bondage. No, not reading this is what got us in bondage. Go ahead.
Gather the people together, men and women and children, and your stranger that is within your gates, that they may hear and that they may learn, and fear Yahweh your Elohim, and observe to do all the words of this law, and that their children, which have not known anything, may hear and learn to fear Yahweh your Elohim, as long as you live in the land, whether you go over Jordan to possess it.
As long as you live in the land, this is my land, abide by my laws. I have given you a culture that you have to abide by as long as you're in my land. All right. You don't want to follow the law? Get out of my land. Hey, we got the same rules in our house, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody come to your house? You got some rules to your house? They don't follow those rules? Gotta go. Ain't nothing personal. You understood the rules of the house. You gotta go. But Yahweh said the same thing. Go ahead.
That was it.
13. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 22. Proverbs chapter 22, and we're going to read verses 1 through 16.
Verse 1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold.
Right, and you build your name every day. You build your name by how we deal with certain things. You don't just give a name and that is what it is, and then that person is, dealt with or judged according to the name that they received at birth. No. You can dirty or clean up that name based on what you do. You can have an absolutely wonderful name as far as biblical understanding, and then be a murderous liar every day. No matter how pretty that name sounds. That name is not a good name, not based on what the name was, based on how you operated in the name. That's why we want to have a spiritual name change when we talk about getting our baptism and beginning our life again, being born again. You don't want the things from that old life to follow you in the new one. And if you ever get your name changed legally, you're going to find out. They're going to ask you, are you changing your name to get out of any legal obligations? You're going to find out. Oh, it carries weight. Go ahead.
There was a time when there was a emphasis placed on having a good family name, even though these surnames aren't ours. But there was a time when people placed emphasis, man. What you doing? You messing up the family name.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, nobody don't care about a family name.
You're right.
I mean, someone that's going to prison. Where your uncle at? He off to college.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm saying? He was serving the country. Because that was a United States prison. You know what I'm saying? So he was serving the country. Go ahead, bro.
The rich and poor meet together. Yahweh is the maker of them all. A prudent man foresees the evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. By humility and the fear of Yah are riches, and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. He that does keep his soul shall be far from them. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Right, and I have to tell people this over and over. There's a very long pause at the end of this verse right here. You got to put here, train up a child in the way he should go. That don't mean he's going that way. All right, you got to first of all deal with that. You train up a child in the way he should go. Then they got a colon right there for a reason. That's the longest colon ever. That's that, boy. You might have to put 20 years at that colon right there. Then it say, and when he is old, he will not depart. But there's this gray area in between when you taught them and when they got old. You're going to have some momentary blindness in that gray area. Because you're going to be like, I know I taught that child better than that right there. I know I explained this to this child better than him. I know this child knows better than that right there. Where they get that from? That little gray area that's in those colons. So after your child get to a certain point, just remember, colons. And nobody else gonna know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? Colons. Read, bro.
The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. He that sows lawlessness shall reap vanity, and the rod of his anger shall fail. He that has a bountiful eye shall be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor. Cast out the scorner, and contention shall go out. Yea, strife and reproach shall cease.
Right. That's how you tell where the problem come from. People all the time say, well, this is a problem. This is a problem. All right, if this person is the problem, let's remove that person. If the problem keep going, that person wasn't the problem. Real simple. That person wasn't the problem if the problem's still there. I used to hear people say all kind of stuff about certain people. But the people that they talked about still around. I don't see no problems. So that person wasn't the problem. They were. Go ahead.
He that loves pureness of heart, for the grace of his lips, the king shall be his friend. The eyes of Yahweh preserve knowledge, and he overthrows the words of the transgressor. The slothful man says, there's a lion without, I shall be slain in the streets. The mouth of strange women is a deep pit.
Hold on, verse 13, the slothful man, this is a lazy man. See, the lazy man says a lion in the street. See, the lazy man got to make a reason why he can't get out and go to work. He got a reason for everything. It's a reason why he didn't do this. It's a reason why he didn't do that. You see, it wasn't the prudent and understanding that says that. No, it's the slothful man who don't want to do nothing anyway. And he got a ready-made excuse of why he didn't do this, why he can't do that, why he didn't do this over here. I was watching a show the other night, one of them lockup shows. Oh man, everybody in there innocent. Everybody in the jail innocent. Every last one of them. Dude got tattooed tears and he done murdered 4 people. I'm innocent. Well, why you got the sign of murder on your face?
Well, I mean, I didn't murder that one. I mean, it was the one they caught me for. It was not the one so I am innocent in that murder per se.
Right. Read, man.
The mouth of strange women is a deep pit. He that is abhorred of Yahweh shall fall therein. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him.
Now, the rod of correction shall drive it far from him, but what are you basing that rod of correction upon? See, it says train up a child in the way that they shall go. Well, that child is learning whether you are acknowledging that you are teaching or not. You can't tell the child, you know what I'm saying, don't smoke. What the hell are you doing?
Now, this stuff is bad for you.
Oh no, you're training that child. Oh, you're training that child. They're not just being trained by the stuff you said. They're also being trained by the stuff that they saw. So then you got to ask yourself, is the stuff that they're seeing, is it going to coincide with the stuff that's written in this book? Because they being trained, and they may not always take things the right way. Understand that's a child brain as they're processing. So how are they processing the things that they see you do? Do you then have some kind of discussion and show what those very things are in the book? Because a child is not going to process the way a grown-up processes. So at some point, there's a discussion that has to be had. There's some reading that has to take place. Go ahead.
He that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches, and he that gives to the rich shall surely come to want.
Sooner or later, this country is going to come to lack. It was built on oppression. It was built on other people's labor. And it really cannot survive without it. It was built that way. And that's the only way it's going to stand. So the day we have to get out of here, it's going to fall about 4 days after. She's not designed to run without free labor. And even in all of the little laws that they passed, it was a slick way of continuing slavery. This whole 13th Amendment thing, this whole thing was set up. All right, slavery is over, except in the case of the person committing a crime. So what that mean? I mean, we can still enslave you. All we got to do is charge you with something. That's what it said. This is why we get tickets and jailed for anything. Because now I can legally put you back into slavery. All I have to do is charge you with a crime. That's legal slavery. It was put into their law. We so busy celebrating. We didn't catch that line. Then here come the Jim Crow laws and all of those things. They passed one law, then they set everything after it to make sure that we would still stay slaves. So even in our freedom, these things were still working against us. Why? Because Yahweh still don't want you to, wait a minute now, I'm going to lessen your hard bondage. But you still got to understand how you got here. You still got to understand how you're going to be free. You still hadn't started walking in my law yet. So yeah, I'm going to stop them from beating you on your back. But I ain't finna quite like let you be free yet. Because you still hadn't acknowledged me. Go ahead.
That was it. Verse.
That was it. Let's go to, there's bits and pieces we have to deal with as well. Let's go to Matthew chapter 19. When Yahweh said, even in dealing with the things of the Passover and unleavened bread, it says, when your son asks you, what mean you by this service? See, what this was showing is that there's some things that we're supposed to be doing, and then they start asking us, well, mama, daddy, why are we doing this? What are you training up the child? See, our parents did spring cleaning, but nobody really knew what that was about. So from generation to generation, they would just spring clean. Now all of a sudden, we start doing the same cleaning, but now we got some understanding with it. So now as we're talking to these kids, now they start cleaning for unleavened bread, but now they have a deeper understanding than what we had when we were younger. We just knew that sometime along the spring, they start cleaning like they were crazy. That way you find out that some of the windows let forward. What the hell is this? The window flipped down? When this window start flipping down, Mom? Boy, that window flipped down since you was born. What's wrong with you, boy? This how we clean both sides of the window. What? When they do that? You didn't see that window flip down to this one time of the year. Because now she cleaning both sides. Now she doing all of these things. We never had any understanding of that. Now, it makes sense because it fit what we're supposed to be doing and getting rid of all the leaven out of our houses. So you can't just do something. There has to be something and then some explanation behind that. Because we did them things, but we didn't have any understanding of what it meant. So what does it prosper you to do something that you don't understand? Didn't prosper us to do it. We know what we were doing. It prospers now because we know exactly what we're doing and we know when to do it. Think about it. The time was movable when you did it before. It's just, I feel like doing this today. Wasn't no real day to do it. Now we know it's a real day. No. We got to do this. We got to start this by then, and we got to end this by this day here. Now it prospers us. Matthew chapter 19, and let's start that at verse 1.
And it came to pass that when Yahshua had finished these things, he departed from Galilee and came into the coast of Judea beyond Jordan. And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause?
And y'all would be amazed at the people that we get, from phone calls to people who would even attend the congregation that want us to give them the okay for a divorce. And we're not doing it. You're going to have to get that okay somewhere else, because you ain't going to get it here. There's understanding that's written in here. Now, we know that you can't make anybody walk into a culture. We backing into the culture. And a lot of times what people will do is come and tell you one side of a story and want you to say, okay, you can leave that situation. I ain't talking to that other person. People have a serious tendency to tell you their one side. Well, they did this. And they just so mean to me. They're so mean. I don't do nothing but read Psalms all day long. You go in there and it's plate fragments where they throwing it at each other. So who threw this plate? If you was reading Psalms, how that plate get on the other side then? See, there's a plate marking on each wall, see? So how did you throw the other plate if you was reading the Psalms? Somebody lying. Somebody lying. Right. Go ahead.
Verse 4. And he answered and said unto them, Have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Wherefore there are no more two, but one flesh. What therefore Elohim has joined together, let not man put asunder. They say unto him, Why did Moshe then command to give a writing of divorcement, and to put her away? He says unto them, Moshe, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication.
Except it be for fornication. But see, this land tells us that we can have irreconcilable differences. We can get divorced because she like blue and I like red. The color scheme don't match on the house. I said get a Toyota, she got a Honda. Go ahead.
And shall marry another, commits adultery. And whoso marries her which is put away, does commit adultery. His disciples say unto him, If the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. But he said unto them, All men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. Then were they brought unto him little children, that he should put his hands on them, and pray. And the disciples rebuked them. But Yahshua said, Suffer little children, and forbid them not.
Right. As the disciples did things that Yahshua needed to correct, he corrected them. But you found that a lot of us don't like to be corrected. So we have some serious issues when it comes down to correction. And a lot of people think that, I accept Yahshua's correction. No, you ain't. Because there's people in here that when he did get to the point of correcting them, it was out. And if we have a problem now, we're going to have that same problem if we don't deal with it. But I guarantee you it's going to be some things that we all going to need correction on. We are backing into a culture. You might slip up and fall a few times. You got to get back up. You got to let him correct you. Go ahead.
To come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and departed thence. And behold, one came and said unto him, Good master, what good thing shall I do, that I may have eternal life? And he said unto him, Why call you me good? There's none good but one, that is Elohim. But if you will enter into life, keep the commandments.
So Yeshua is saying the same thing that Moshe was saying, the same thing that was given to Israel in the beginning. Walk in these commandments. These are the things that are going to keep you free. We turn around, walk against them, and then find ourselves in spiritual bondage, one level after another, and then try to figure out why. And once you get in prison, it takes a minute to get out. See, what we want to do, we walk against the commandment, get yoked up and put in a couple bad situations. Then we want to walk right for 2-3 days and wonder why we ain't got parole. Oh no, you got to write a lot of them letters for the parole board hear you after that. Oh no. You have to convince the parole board that you have changed for a long-term change. You might have to visit the parole board 4-5 times. They just look at you, no, you don't seem sincere yet. What? Yeah. In one of those little lockup shows, they had a meeting between this guy and the mother and the widow of the person he killed. Man, I was crying by the time it was over. This thing was messed up. It was messed up for both parties. For this dude to have to look, and I'm talking about this table is the size of this altar. It is a little table in between where the mama sitting and where the man widow was sitting, and the prisoner who killed the person that they love. My God, it was a very difficult thing. It was a difficult thing for me to watch. I can only imagine what it was like for every last one of them, including the murderer. He felt strange. And that's something, man, that we just don't really consider. The repercussions behind, doing some things. And this system was set up to put us back in slavery, and by throwing all those drugs and doing all those things in our neighborhood, it made sure that we'd be right back in slavery. Because those guys in there working for pennies on the dollar. It's slavery again. They're working for major corporations in there. Same corporations that won't hire you out here. They hire you when you go to jail. Go ahead.
He says unto him, Which? Yahshua said, You shall do no murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
Honoring your father and your mother does not mean worshiping their God. Honoring your father and your mother has a level. You can honor them without worshiping their God. You can honor them without living your whole life for them. They got to live their life and you have to live yours. You can honor them, but I won't be over there on Christmas. Go ahead.
The young man says unto him, All these things have I kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? Yahshua said unto him, If you will be perfect, go and sell that you have, and give to the poor, and you shall have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Then said Yahshua unto his disciples, Verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Not that it was impossible for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And that is more about the mind state of the individual, not the actual riches. It's about what it does to your mind. In the beginning, as he gives us the commandments, he says, when you are full and when you have goodly houses, make sure you don't forget these things that I've told you. So he already knew what we were going to do. And sometimes the more we have, the less we want to deal with Yahweh. The more he gives us, the more distant we get. So we give him no choice but to start taking some of that stuff back. You know what? I ain't seen you in a while. Give me that car. You know what? I ain't seen you in a while. That's a nice coat. Give me that coat. So now you got to walk and shake when you come back up. Now you're cold. You could have drove him. You could have had a good coat when you got him. See? Yahweh said, I just missed you, that's all. If you act like you got some sense, I'll give it back. But I mean, why I ain't seen you? Right. He dealt with that in the beginning of our word because he already knew Israel. When I have done this for you, make sure you don't forget who gave it to you. Go ahead.
And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of Elohim. When his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, Who then can be saved? But Yahshua beheld them, and said unto them, With men this is impossible, but with Elohim all things are possible. Then answered Cephas, and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all, and followed you. What shall we have therefore? And Yahshua said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that you which have followed me, in the regeneration when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, you also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone that has forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
So then we have to deal with verse 29. And everyone that has forsaken houses, brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, not for your own dealings. You can't forsake the house because, I didn't want to pay the bill. I charge that on you, Yahweh. No, you ain't. That ain't nothing to do with my God. You didn't forsake that house to follow him. You forsake that house because you didn't want to take care of your business. You don't get to lay that on his altar. See, no, we got to deal with some understanding on some things here. Let's go to our 1 Timothy chapter 5. First Timothy chapter 5, and we're going to start that at verse 1.
Rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren.
Right. There's a certain amount of respect that's given to the elders who have lived longer, so they earn a certain amount of respect. So you have to deal with them in that. Go ahead.
The elder women as mothers.
So this is not just an elder man, this is an elder woman as well. Go ahead.
The younger as sisters with all purity. Honor widows that are widows indeed. But if any widow have children or nephews, let them learn first to show piety at home and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before Elohim. Now she that is a widow indeed and desolate trusts in Elohim and continues in supplications and prayers night and day. But she that lives in pleasure is dead while she lives. And these things give in charge, that they may be blameless. But if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel.
If it was worse than an infidel is a non-believer. So, but if any provide not for his own, see, you have to deal with that part about forsaken houses, because people will take that word and flip it for their own use and say, I'm going to receive all these great things because I've forsaken my house. No, you were just a man that didn't pay his bill. You didn't forsake no house. Well, nobody trying to keep you from serving Yahweh. That was your own decision. See, this is something that we have to deal with, and you go right back to those embedded things of slavery, because you have a lot of our men who will not take care of their kids if they're no longer physically involved with the woman. Oh, they'll take care of the kids as long as they get happy time. See, no happy time, no kid taken care of. Now the kid hungry because you're not getting happy time. No. That ain't got nothing to do with that kid. That got something to do with you. That ain't got nothing to do with the kid. That is another one of those embedded slavery things. Matter of fact, I've seen people that will take care of the kid of the new woman that they with, but won't take care of the kid that is theirs. Why? Because they get happy time with the new woman. Right. Let's see what Yahshua think about your happy time. Read, bro.
Verse 9.
Now I want you to go to this next graphic here.
The most significant debate regarding the history of African American families was sparked not by an historian, but by sociologist and policymaker, subsequently Senator from New York, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, in 1927 through 2003. In 1965, as an employee of the Office of Policy Planning in the Labor Department, during the Johnson administration, Moynihan released a report called The Negro Family.
Now see, we pay attention to that when white people put it out. See, that's what we need to see. We need to see a Negro family report from a white guy. You know what I'm saying? You know, because we don't want to hear it if a black dude say it, you know. Say, I'm too black. You understand? Go ahead.
The Case for National Action. Drawing on the work of sociologist E. Franklin Frazier, Moynihan traced problems he said African Americans encountered in 1965 back to slavery. Although
People said slavery was long ago. He said, no. Some of these problems that they deal with has got something to do with what we did to them. Go ahead.
Although he acknowledged a racist virus in the American bloodstream and noted 3 centuries of unimaginable mistreatment, Moynihan blamed what he saw as the disintegration of poor, urban black families squarely on slavery. He said slavery had developed a fatherless, matriarchal, mother-centered pattern within black families. Men, he claimed, did not learn roles of providing and protecting, and this shortcoming passed down through generations. Moynihan discussed racism and chronic employment and its effects on African Americans, but it was his description of a matriarchal family and its tangled of pathology that drew attention both from those who disagreed with him and those who supported his findings.
Right. When you deal with a matriarchal type system, this is something that is ran by the mother. The Bible has a patriarchal system where it's supposed to be ran by the father. So if you create a system where you take all the power away from that man, then now the family is being ran in a different way. And it is going to cause some issues and some long-term issues. And these are the things that we have not fully dealt with, because they have long-term plagued our people. And it's still causing us some issues where we have men that want to declare that they are the head of the house, but don't know what that means. It's just like the way it sounds. I'm in charge. All right, well, lead. I don't know where I'm going. Well, how am I supposed to follow you then? Go ahead. Jump to verse 9. Yeah.
1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 9. Let not a widow be taken in the number under 80 years old, having been the wife of one man, well reported of for good works. If she have brought up children, if she have lodged strangers, if she have washed the saints' feet, if she have relieved the afflicted, if she have diligently followed every good work. But the younger widows refuse, for when they have begun to wax wanton against the Mashiach, they will marry.
Right. He says the younger widows should remarry. Go ahead.
Having damnation, because they have cast off their first faith. And withal, they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house.
Right. This is what ends up causing issues. He said this idleness then causes us to wander about from house to house. Go ahead.
And not only idle, but tattlers also, and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not.
Right. So being busy is a good thing. If we're busy in the things of some righteous things that are going to benefit the kingdom of Yahweh. Otherwise, it leads to issues when we ain't busy. Go ahead.
And you know, this thing goes on both sides, because a lot of people don't look at who is talking to me. You got that unmarried sister or that unmarried brother constantly at your house. And when they say misery loves company, you at home with your family, they trying to get you to go out. You keep going out, then you have no family.
Now we like, brother. Yeah, man. Now we can be two old dudes at the club. You know what I'm saying? It's lonely being the only old dude at the club. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, bro.
I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. For some are already turned aside after Satan. If any man or woman that believes have widows, let them relieve them, and let not the church be charged, that it may relieve them that are widows indeed. Let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine. For the scripture says, you shall not muzzle the ox that treads out the corn, and the laborer is worthy of his reward. Against an elder receive not an accusation, but before 2 or 3 witnesses.
Right. So there's certain things that you may have to let happen several times before dealing with an elder. Go ahead.
Them that sin rebuke before all, that others also may fear.
All right. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6, and let's read verses 1 through 13.
Children, obey your parents in the Adonai, for this is right. Honor your father and mother.
Once again, honor your father and mother. Go ahead.
Which is the first commandment with promise.
And understand, our people are dealing with the situation and the belief that our fathers and our mothers are walking in the correct culture. We can't make that assumption today. So you have to learn where that balance line is dealing with honoring father and mother, and they worship a different God. And there comes times when our father and our mother, they may be going through some things, and in one part of your mind you're saying, I want to pray for my family. And then that other part jump in the other side of your brain and say, if this happened, they're going to thank Jesus. Now you got to think about, now you got a whole nother prayer you got to say. Now you got a prayer for your prayer. Go ahead.
That it may be well with you, and you may live long on the earth. And you fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Adonai.
You fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. There are things that we can do that will provoke the children to walk in an adversarial way against Yahweh. And a lot of that is dependent upon how we deal with things. If we deal with things in a certain way, it causes them or provokes them to walk in a certain way. We can't say do all of these things, but then we're not going to do any of them. It is going to provoke them. And then there's other ways that they can be provoked that we're going to get into as well. Go ahead.
Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as unto the Mashiach.
Now, this right here is certain of these things that they would read to our people as slaves. Obey your masters. Obey your masters. Just to make obedient slaves. Now, this particular one, I want you to pay attention to. In the beginning, in verse 1, it says, "Children, obey your parents." Then you got servants in verse 5. Be obedient to them that are your masters. Now, keep those two in mind. Go ahead, keep reading.
Not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of the Mashiach, doing the will of Elohim from the heart. With good will, doing service, as to the Adonai, and not to men. Knowing that whatsoever good thing any man does, the same shall he receive of the Adonai, whether he be bond or free. And you masters, do the same things unto them, forbearing threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Adonai and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of Elohim, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of Elohim, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand.
All right. Now, understand that we've read the things about withhold not correction from the child, for if you beat him with the rod, he shall not die. But this is, of course, dealing with us setting up a understanding of the things that Yahweh has given us, and us also making the best attempt to walk in those things. So there is some form of understanding. But in this one chapter here, you have obey your parents and be obedient to your masters. Now, understand the conflicts that arise from that. Brother, read the things from the next graphic.
Conflicts over whether parents or owners had control over enslaved children.
Now, this issue still lingers today, and we're going to explain how this still goes on. Go ahead.
The following paragraph is from Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, written by Harriet Jacobs, a former slave, in 1861. My father, by his nature, as well as by the habit of transacting business as a skillful mechanic, had more of the feelings of a free man than is common among slaves. My brother was a spirited boy, and being brought up under such influences, he early detested the name of master and mistress. One day, when his father and his mistress had happened to call him at the same time.
So then you have his father, the slave, and the mistress being the master's wife. Go ahead.
He hesitated between the two, being perplexed to know which had the strongest claim upon his obedience.
Which had the strongest claim upon his obedience. So now he's torn in between who to listen to. Go ahead.
He finally concluded to go to his mistress. When my father reproved him for it, he said, "You both called me, and I didn't know which I ought to go to first." "You are my child," replied our father, And when I call you, you should come immediately if you have to pass through fire and water. Poor Willie, he was now to learn his first lesson of obedience to a master.
Right. So then you have this big situation that causes some issues on trying to figure out where this obedience is supposed to lie. This has caused some individuals to raise their kids with weaknesses that they may rule over them at their own will. When we consider what the body is, the whole part about a computer is that it was supposed to be the making of an individual. You got the hardware, which are the parts of the body, and then you have the software, which is the thinking, the part of the brain. The software controls everything over the hardware. Doesn't matter how strong the hardware is. If the software is weak, that's going to be a weak computer. This software is how we think and how we've been programmed. So understanding that there was always this problem of who the obedience needs to go to. There are some that have specifically raised their kids with limitations so that any given point they can get back in and get their obedience by saying things that's going to make them weak. You'll never be able to do this without me. You can't do such and such. So when it comes to a problem, they're automatically going to run back to that person. Even though they may be strong, they have a perceived weakness in their own mind. So whether they can do it or not, they're going to still run back to that particular individual because they were programmed to. That is still an issue today. And we're going to get a little bit more. Let's go to Acts chapter 22. Because when you have a broken family, now you got mom and father fighting over who they supposed to listen to. And sometimes we can have a broken family and all of us in the same house. Mama said one thing, daddy said something else. And see, you got to be careful because kids pick up on that real quick. They pick up on which one of y'all is the soft one. And the one that's soft ain't always the one with the head wrap. Sometimes the soft one is the big muscular dude. But yeah, I'm going to get softy. Who you talking about? Daddy. He's so soft. Oh man, he's so fluffy, I'm gonna die. Yeah. yeah. Oh, them kids figure out real quick. They figure out real quick. Oh no. This one I need to talk to daddy. Oh no. That one I need to talk to mama. Oh no. You think, oh boy, them kids, they got little baby PhDs. They figure out stuff. They just be watching. Right? They figure out a lot. Acts 22, and let's start at verse 17.
And it came to pass that when I was come again to Jerusalem, even while I prayed in the temple, I was in a trance, and saw him saying unto me, Make haste and get you quickly out of Jerusalem, for they will not receive your testimony concerning me. And I said, Adonai, they know that I imprisoned and beat in every synagogue them that believed on you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by, and consenting unto his death, and kept the raiment of them that slew him. And he said unto me, Depart, for I will send you far hence unto the Gentiles.
Right. He know that he had done this wrong unto other servants. He know that he had done these things. So he said, look, they're not going to listen to you there. But I got some work for you somewhere else. You still going to work for me. You just can't work right there, which is not where I need you to be anyway. Go ahead.
And they gave him audience unto this word, and then lifted up their voices, and said, Away with such a fellow from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. And as they cried out, and cast off their clothes, and threw dust into the air, the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle, and bade that he should be examined by scourging, that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. And as they bound him with thongs, Saul said unto the centurion that stood by, Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned?
Okay, now Saul asked some questions here. Why? Because he got his paperwork right. See, when you got your paperwork right, you can say some stuff that you just can't say when your paperwork not right. See, we got a couple Jamaicans that ain't got that piece of paper. You know what I'm saying? So, you know what I'm saying, when we get pulled over, you know what I'm saying, they always the quietest Jamaicans in the car. You know what I'm saying? They say absolutely nothing. It be mum's the word, Jack. Because they know they ain't got that little card. You know, you need that little card. They ain't got that card. So if we get pulled over, you know what I'm saying, now this was a loud Jamaican before the cop pulled us over. Yo, Bridget, you ready to pop, you know what I'm talking about? Police pull us over. You can't smell the mango or coconut on his breath. He don't say nothing, right? Because his paperwork ain't right. When your paperwork ain't right, shut your mouth. Okay? Now, Saul got his paperwork right. So he talking a little mess. Go ahead.
When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain.
Right.
saying,
Now, centurion, he's talking to a soldier. He's talking to the authorities. Because he said, I got my paperwork right. You got to deal with me in a certain fashion. Because I got paperwork. Go ahead. It don't matter what I look like. I know you think you see a Hebrew. Because Saul said, I'm a Hebrew of the tribe of Benjamin. I'm a Hebrew of the Hebrews. Yes, I am a Hebrew. But right here, he says, I got my paperwork right. I'm a Roman. Go ahead.
saying, Take heed what you doeth, for this man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, Tell me, are you a Roman? He said, Yes.
Now, they're confused. But you a black Italian. See, Romans are Italians. Understand, when you start looking at all of the things that have happened by the Roman Catholic Church, do understand, those Italians, think about them, the same gangsters that's been killing and murdering, the same mobsters, okay, been the same people. And a lot of times we just hear Rome, we just did, no. These are Italians, okay? So they'll murder a bunch of people and then come and make confession in the church, which is probably how that law got there, that a priest don't have to tell any of the stuff that is told to him. See, they can't make a priest testify. So whatever murders y'all commit, I will never snitch on you. And they can't make me snitch on you. That probably came from them, because they did a lot of murders. Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. What you do? I killed all them people down that hill over there. Here go $20,000 though. All right, son. Do 4 Hail Marys and you know what I'm saying? It's over with. Right. Go on about your business. Yeah.
And the chief captain answered, With a great sum obtained I this freedom. And Saul said, But I was freeborn.
Uh-huh.
Then
And what happens if a Mexican come over here and they get born over here? What happened? They're American. They got papers. Now you have to consider that. A Mexican can be undocumented, come here, be born, and get papers. Yet we got some Hebrew children walking around here that ain't got no papers at all. And that was by design, because their daddy decided not to get them any papers. Yet the Mexicans got sense enough, they can't speak English. Hey, they still they study the paper, is the child, they marry the kid, USA, yeah. They got sense enough to get their kids some papers. Because now, when ICE come, their kids don't get deported. What keeps that from happening? The paperwork. Yeah, we got some kids walking around, they ain't got no paperwork. Why? Go ahead, bro.
I mean, even in that thing, you got people in Mexico who are not Mexicans that got caught up in that ICE thing, and they couldn't figure out where they come from.
Exactly. That you are so. Bro, I told somebody the same thing. And you know how hard it's got to be if you get sent to Mexico and you can't speak Spanish? Let me tell you something. And they speak real fast already. You know, Julio Iglesias and Jasmine, that's you know what I'm saying? They run through a whole sentence. Now, here you go with your little dumb Spanish. You sound like the dude on Speedy Gonzalez. Remember the slow one? Hello, señor Speedy. Como se llama? They're going to be like, he's slow. You know, have to think about it. He don't speak it fast at all. You know what I'm saying? They ain't got time to be waiting for you to say nothing. You know what I'm saying? They speak everything fast. So nobody got time for your little slow Spanish. I mean, this dude's slow, man. So now you find yourself, because you didn't do nothing, you know, your stuff right. Now your kid in Mexico, yet he can't speak Spanish. And they gonna notice you. You don't know look at Espanol. They gonna pick out real quick. You El Negro. Hey, man.
And straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him. And the chief captain also was afraid, after he knew that he was a Roman, and because he had bound him.
Mm-hmm. You finish that? Now,
verse 29.
So when they realized that they had dealt with that out of order, they were then afraid because of the paperwork. Now read the stuff on the next graphic.
Why should children be legitimated? The law encourages the fathers of children to legally recognize them. The legitimization process is a way for them to do this. It gives the father and the child certain rights. Legitimization means that a child may inherit from the father and the father may inherit from the child. How may a child born out of wedlock be legitimated? There are 3 ways to legitimate a child.
In other words, understand, in slave states, the only people who had rights to the child are the mother and the slave master. Now, we already read the things from the child. The status of the child follows the mother. So, if you were not married when that child was born, that father is not legitimately connected to that child. Remember that little part where there's a confusion as to who to listen to? Oh, yeah. It's right in their law. And the confusion is still there today. Go ahead.
The first way is for the mother and the reputed father to marry and for the father to then recognize the child as his. The second way is for the mother and father to sign a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity, according to OCGA 19-7-22. In any voluntary acknowledgement of paternity which has been made and has not been rescinded pursuant to Code Section 19-7-46.1, when both the mother and father freely agree and consent, the child may be legitimated by the inclusion of a statement indicating a voluntary acknowledgement of legitimation. Legitimate is the legal term and means someone being genuine or of real value, permitted by a set of rules or law.
Now, when my first child was born, there was no marriage there. I ended up paying $1,000 to deal with the legitimation process. Now brothers can do that for $200. 100? Come on, brother. Cost me $1,000. But see, what happens is, if that child is not legitimately yours, something happens to the mother, they're going to be looking for somebody else in that family to get that child to, not to you. See? Or, like my brother just said, or give that child to the state. Now, what happens if the child don't have any paperwork? They might give your child to Mexico. See, we spend all our time dealing with all the wrong stuff. Go ahead, bro.
What effects does a legitimization have? The court will pass an order declaring the child legitimate and capable of inheriting from the father, just as if the child had been born during a marriage.
You see how they have their stuff set up? If there was not, and they didn't allow us to marry in the beginning. So automatically those kids were automatically the property of the slave owner. And them laws still there. They still operating in the same way. Go ahead, bro.
You know, there's an undertone that I think a lot of us are also missing. You know, say the passing of the father and this legitimate thing hasn't happened, and there's no paperwork of inheritance, his side of family can say, nah, he don't get nothing. We don't know them.
Right. We ain't taking care of that boy. All it takes is one family member to say, we didn't like her. So now these kids suffer for the rest of their life while the mama go off to Bermuda. Oh, and don't think you ain't gonna suffer for that. Y'all ain't gonna hold everybody accountable. Let's go to Psalms chapter 127.
Psalms chapter 127. Except Yahweh build a house, thy labor in vain that build it. Verse 1. Except Yahweh build a house, they labor in vain that build it. Except Yahweh keep the city, the watchman wakes, but in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved sleep. Lo, children are an heritage of Yahweh, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate.
All right, let us hear the conclusion of this matter. Let's go to Malachi chapter 4. Malachi chapter 4, and that's verses 1 through 6.
982. Malachi chapter 4 and verse 1. For behold, the days come that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble, and the day that comes shall burn them up, says Yahweh of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and you shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. And you shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, says Yahweh of hosts. Remember you the law of Moshe my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel, with the statutes and the judgments. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of Yah. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse.
And understand it is a part of those curses that has separated the heart of the fathers from the heart of the children. This is a part of those things that we have had to deal with because of us walking against the law of Yahweh our Elohim. That is where that separation is. So those things have to be set back in order, but we have to understand that Yahweh gave us a righteous law as the children of Israel were getting ready to go into his land. So all of these things have to be start being restored if we truly want to live in the land that Yahweh has given unto us. And that's the only way we're going to deal with true peace. You might be allowed to go in somebody else's house, but ain't no peace like being in your house. We have gone to all these other lands, but ain't no peace like being in your own, where the officers look like you, where the lawyers look like you, where the judges look like you, and everybody being dealt with according to the same righteous law. And you'll be able to provide and deal with things, legal issues for yourself. Because you're going to have the same book that you deal with on the Sabbath is the same book that you're going to take to court. So you're going to find they got a totally different law here. They say they Christian, but that law they got downtown, that law ain't got nothing to do with the book. You get one of them Black's Law dictionaries, you find out that they'll say a word that mean one thing in Webster's. You get your Black's Law dictionary and find out that ain't what that mean. They speaking a whole nother language right in front of you. They start speaking Latin and all that. Man, why they speaking Latin? They speak English. They want to make sure you don't understand. They don't want you to be able to follow the law because then they can't charge you for breaking it. And when you pay your money to the lawyer, he has to overcharge you because he's got to get enough for him and enough to break off the judge and enough to break off the other lawyer. So he's got to collect for several people. That's the way the game works. So we got to get completely sick of this game so that we can embrace our own. That's all that we're going to do for today. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.